I joined and like no one was here. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, no, I dropped the Zoom link. You're like super fast, man.
Also, I figured out when he was talking about like when he was doing like this pickling example, he was doing like he was creating the model in VS Code rather than like being like a notebook or a REPL. So that's what all those extra lines I was seeing was actually him creating the model and then
Oh, okay.
pickling it all in
What are you
one.
guys talking about?
We're talking about Mike's lecture notes.
Oh, I jumped off the USS Rossetti, buddy.
Yeah, that's okay. As long as you get what you need to get.
Yeah, no, I got it. Dude, I've been having problems with the style sheet, man.
Secondary, brother.
Andy, what's your source?
Myself. No, dude. 365 data science.
Data Science 365.
365 data science, bro. That dude, he's British. He talks fluently. Awesome.
Hey, it's working.
Yeah, and Corey Schaefer, obviously.
Yeah, well, Corey Schaefer's a staple.
Yeah, I was in a chit chat with him today.
Get out. You were talking with Corey about what?
About his next Q&A.
Oh, okay.
He had a live Q&A the other day.
Oh, that's badass.
Did I not post it?
I don't remember seeing it, but that doesn't mean you didn't post it. Get in here, hang on. Got like a hair in my mouth. Gross.
I have so many jokes.
Stop. It's a repeat of the last one, man. Don't do that. I said something about like I didn't know I could make it bigger, and you were like, all right, I'm done here. I'm gonna go wash my hands.
Exactly.
Let's see, web app. Yeah. So what I'm gonna be doing today, guys, is just pretty much taking up, or rather, picking up where I left off with the web app. Do you guys still have that? Does everyone have that web app? Okay. Trying to see. Not sure if I should be happy or concerned that most of the people in After Hours today are my team.
I think it's because you're very popular in the after hours, buddy.
Maybe. All right. So, just getting my situation set up here, guys. I'm having to transition from the project I'm doing to this one.
I'm sure you set up a new computer with some new weird operating system.
No. I'm done. Toying with the operating systems. I'm just gonna stick with what we got, so I don't break it. Not having a repeat of that one weekend where I had to figure out how to recover my Windows boot drive.
Yeah.
It was completely gone. I deleted it. Like, how do you make one of those? Okay, so what do you want to do here? Let's go ahead and get this loaded up in Atom. So I have the text editor. I did have the foresight to go ahead and it saves my increased font size as well. It's pretty interesting for like each different project that I'm working on. It's really weird. I gotta figure out how it does that. So yeah, I had the foresight to think about actually getting an API that we can use, and you guys are gonna love this. Stand by. What in the world?
Bro, that
The
sounds like Mickey
suspense is
Mouse is trying
killing
to
me.
break in your house.
I'm gonna ignore whatever that's happening out there. Yeah, I'm gonna ignore that. Okay, so it's just this neighborhood kids. I have no idea.
Blink twice if you're in trouble.
No, I'm fine. Yeah, so I had the foresight to actually go and get an API that we can work with today. You guys are going to love this, though. I accidentally, at first, picked the API that your sprint challenge is done on. So I had to, like, at the last second, like, quickly run, like, oh, no, I can't use this one. This is the one we're going to use for their sprint challenge, you know, that, like, I would have gotten in so much trouble for that.
Where did you find that API?
I cannot tell you. I will for sure lose my status as a TL if I did that. But the one that we're going to be working with is really no different, and you'll find that most APIs pretty much function the same way. unless it has a wrapper. And I want to stress this: the one you're using for your sprint challenge is not using a wrapper. You will be hitting URLs to make your own API calls. Okay, there will be no tweepy.get.username. That's not a thing, right? There's no wrapper for it. You could make one. Fun fact, though I doubt you'll have time. So that being said, you'll probably just want to go ahead and use the request library or the URL lib library like we're going to do, or rather I'm going to demonstrate. So before I get started, does anyone have any specific questions or errors that they want to tackle before I start doing that weird lecture / live code / make a fool of myself part of this whole situation?
Hey, Peg.
What's up, Ping? Long time no see. How you doing?
Yeah, good. I don't have a specific question right now, but the totally the overall my understanding, yeah, it is new, very new knowledge for me. Now I just watch video and do the homework, but I'm not totally understand. Because why we use why we use there is a service and a temple, yeah, service and roles. I don't know. I will, yeah, I just want to listen to it. You're talking, yeah, talk about it.
Okay, yeah, I forgive me. I don't think I heard a specific question in there. Correct me if I'm wrong. However, yeah, if you have any questions that crop up along this presentation, right, just let me know. Interject whenever, guys. It's not formal here. Okay. What am I going to be doing today? I'm going to use the FLASK app that I worked with you guys on, right, our web app, as it were. Currently, it does nothing. C's making us some dinner. Really
Yeah, she
appreciate
is.
that, C. But yeah, so I'm going to work with that. I'm going to hit some APIs. We're going to get information from an API and then use it in some meaningful way. I'm also going to quickly, albeit maybe without any real context, demonstrate actually getting a model pickled and then using it in your app, right? I can't guarantee that it's going to do anything, but the process will be the same, right? The actual pickling and then bringing that or using that pickled model. Okay.
Are you recording or should I record it?
No, this Zoom is set to auto record, right? Right, Jacob?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all been recorded. But yeah, without further ado, then I guess let's go ahead and get started. I'll share my screen. Okay, can everybody see this all right? Do I need to make it bigger?
A little bit bigger would be good.
All right, let's make this a little bigger. How's that? Perfect. All right. So this is the application that we were working on. I think it was Monday. I meant to do this again yesterday as well, but I had some issues I needed to take care of. So just to kind of recap real quick, okay? We have the init.py. That's where we actually do our create app. And then I use something called application context, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Mike does not use, so that may be new. Okay, but essentially it works pretty much the same. You just have to open up application context if you work from a REPL, right, in order to get this part to work. That being said, everything else that we do is exactly the same whether you're in app context or not. Okay, that doesn't matter. Everything else works the same. So this is the routes.py. This is what I'm using to control all of my application routes. I do not have blueprints in this model. I will not be using them. Okay. Mike does a pretty good job of showing you how to separate your routes into different blueprints and how to fix the structure to work with that. However, I don't think that our applications are ever going to be anywhere near large enough or complex enough to warrant blueprints to be used. So I opt for the simpler method of one file, rather, if you will, to rule them all. Okay. This has got some pretty basic functions in it. We create a user, and I showcased how to make a database connection, query the database, and add a user if necessary, and then how to display those users. And if you guys will humor me, this sort of Jinja syntax in our HTML file here that gets rendered when we hit that endpoint, that's the same syntax we're going to be using to display our data that we get back from the API that we call. Okay. So I've done a couple of things. Yeah.
I got a question for you. You don't need that ginger. I can't even pronounce it, but you don't need it to say body of that if.
No, I got body tags, and then just straight into if. Yeah, it needs to be inside the body tags. That's where everything that is going to be displayed to the web browser, like in your browser window, everything needs to be in body that's going to be displayed.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this stuff is parsed, but it's not displayed. All right, everything in your head, but everything in body is actually displayed. All right, cool, good question. Now, that being said, we're going to hit an API endpoint. We're going to create a new route that touches an API endpoint and gets a response. And then we're going to walk through the process of figuring out how that response works, right? It's a little bit more involved than the Tweepy thing, because the Tweepy kind of abstracts away all of the various steps that I'm going to be demonstrating. But I think these are all steps that are going to be applicable to your sprint challenge, right? So definitely make sure that you pay attention to how I'm doing this. I'm probably using a more antiquated method, using URL-lib instead of requests library. So I'm going to defer if you choose to use requests instead of URL-lib. I'm going to defer to their documentation for the translation of these various steps. Okay, but this is the way I learn, so this is the way I'm going to teach it. Okay, so the first step is figuring out what API we're going to be hitting. And in that respect, I have gone and done the research and have decided to use this Alpha Vantage API. Okay, that's given me stock market information. I know nothing about the stock market, but that's okay because this is just a demonstration, right? But assume for a second that I wanted to build an application that utilized this data in some way, right? This is real data. You could build a predictive model off of this and try to play the stock market. You'll lose your butt because there's very few predictive models that are actually really good at trading. But, you know, that's a thing you can do, right? So how does this work? This API is set up such that you need an API key. And that was important. I wanted to make sure that I chose one that needed it. The one for your for your sprint challenge will not require an API key. So there's that to consider, but most will, right? So I want to demonstrate one of the various methods that they'll use to authenticate that you're allowed to collect data, okay? And the way that this is going to work is we're going to construct a URL, okay? The URL is formatted in this kind of way, right? Where we have the URL to the where the API is located. And then everything after this slash here, query, and then the question mark function, and then we have that, we see that says equals time series intraday, and then this ampersand symbol equals, and then ampersand again, interval equals. These are parameters that we're giving to the API, okay? Each of these can be configured in ways that are documented, so that we can see that the API has parameters for this intraday function, right? And we're told that this is the function, the time series of your choice, and it tells us the format, function equals time series intraday. Capitalization matters. These variables are being passed into whatever backend is processing this request, and the capitalization will matter, okay? Make note of that. And we see that we have three required. We need function, symbol, and interval. Functions provided for us. It's this thing right here, right? This is the one we want to use. Symbol is the symbol or the name of the equity of your choice. In this case, I think that defaults to Microsoft. Is anyone privy? Know what that is?
Yeah, that's stock symbol.
Okay, stock name or stock ticker, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can choose whatever you wanted. In this case, demonstration is Microsoft. Cool. And then interval. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options to choose from. This is important. You can't make up your own, right? It's telling you you have to choose from one of these 5 options. Okay. And then we have optional stuff. These are things that are not required. Output size, that sounds pretty self-explanatory. Strings compact and full are accepted with the following specifications. So you would just read through this and try to figure out what do you need for your purposes, right? Data type, again, you would read through this documentation, figure out what you need. One more required variable here is going to be that API key, okay? So different APIs have different methods that you'll have to go through to acquire an API key. Most require you to sign up in some way. So you'll probably be providing a username, password, and email so they can identify you. And I can tell you from experience that that's mostly to track the usage of that particular API, right? They want to see how you're using it. So typically they'll ask questions associated with who do you work for or what organization are you affiliated with, right? And that's again for data collection purposes for the most part and to monitor for misuse of the API. Okay, so they collect some information about you and in turn they give you access to their system. That API key will be appended to the very end as per our demonstration here, right? So I've already gone through the process and signed up and I have that key right here. So I have my key, right? This is going to be a staple in my request. It's always going to include that. All right, cool. So now we're ready to get started. I'm just going to start with making a very simple call to this. Here, the next step is what might be a little confusing. I don't want to jump straight into my text editor to start pounding away keys, making my new route, okay? For a number of reasons, not least of which is that I have no idea yet what format this data is going to come in, right? So I would be just walking into this completely blind at this point, right? So what I want to do is I want to start working in a REPL, okay? I want to give myself an isolated environment where I can kind of narrow down the process that I'm going to need to automate in a script, right? So consider at this point your usage case. What you need to start thinking about: what data do I need? How do I need it, right? The data type that it comes in, is it coming in a dictionary? Do I need to get it from a dictionary to a list or a list of tuples, right? There's a lot of factors that go into play at this stage. This is the planning stage, okay? Now, for this purpose, I really just want to be able to display the information somehow, right? Whatever way seems most adequate. But for instance, if you're trying to put this into a database, what format might you need your data in? If you were trying to put it in a database, what format does it need to come in? Anybody remember?
What was the question again? I'm sorry, buddy. I was texting.
If you needed to put the data in a database, what form would it need to come in?
JSON?
You can. It will typically come in JSON. That's what I'm expecting. However, to get it into a database, you need it in a list of tuples, right?
Yeah.
Remember from last week? And then from there, you can extract the data that you need. Now, if you're doing it through a route, I can tell you that there's another way you can do it. But honestly, the fastest way to do it would be to write it in to your database the old-fashioned way with the actual SQL command. And for that, you would need a list of tuples. Okay. That said, let's see if we can get this into a format where I can just print out some stuff on a web page, right? Don't want to do anything too fancy here. So I'm going to go ahead and load up my terminal here. And I'm in web app. Cool. If I do pip list, or rather I shouldn't need to. URLlib is a standard Python library. If you have Python installed and access to Python, i.e. you get into the Python REPL, you have access to it. If you want to use the requests library, you have to install it. That is not a standard Python library, but URLlib and JSON are the two Python libraries we're going to be using, that I'm going to be using, do not require any extra package installations. right, that comes stock standard. So that's something to consider. Okay. So yeah, if your go with this requires the request library, you want to make sure you have that installed, or not. Just you're using the standard libraries, you don't need to do anything. So I'm going to pip shell to demonstrate getting into my virtual environment. And now I can go ahead and load into my Python REPL. Okay. So I can see I'm using Python 3.7.4 as expected. Everything's working. I'm going to go ahead and import the libraries I'm going to need. For this demonstration, I'm going to require the URL lib and JSON libraries. So I'll import, rather I'm going to say from URL lib, that's 2 L's, import request. Oh, maybe it's not requests. Yeah, it's request. And then import JSON. Okay. Let's talk about JSON a little bit. JSON is going to help us if we have a JSON object that gets returned to us. Okay, which is typically what APIs will give you by default. Okay. Specifically, the JSON has load and loads. We're going to be using loads to actually parse this request. Okay. If it comes in JSON, we're also going to have to do something called a decode. So that's an extra step, but you'll have to typically decode anything that comes through the web. Okay. And you'll decode it as UTF-8. We'll discuss that when we get to it. All right, so we're ready to get started. The first thing that I need to do is I need to find a URL to hit, right? So I need to go ahead and construct this URL. So let's see what we need. We need HTTPS www.alphavantage.co. So let's go ahead and start this process, right? I'm going to say URL, right? This is the URL I'm hitting. And I'm going to say this needs to be request dot URL open is the command. You would find this by actually looking at the documentation. That's where I found it, first page. And I'm going to say, now I'm going to start constructing this URL as a string, okay? alphavantage.co / I need to do query, then a question mark. Now I'm ready to start giving my parameters. Function equals time series intraday.
There's no copy and paste, huh?
I'm not going to copy and paste.
No, I'm
Nope.
just asking, just in general.
Sure, there is. If you
Okay.
you're still typing it by hand at some point, you can write it into a notepad or something like that, and then copy paste it. But typically, you'll have to do this by hand, anyways.
I'm sorry, if I want to follow you, like, can we use your key or no?
Yeah, you can use my key if you want. If you're following along, absolutely. And I'll give you that in just a second, okay? And then we're going to do symbol. And I'm just going to follow along with their demonstration here, Microsoft. Don't really care what we get, right? But you would want to make sure you put what you wanted in there. And then interval. Give me 30 min. And ampersand API key. Now this is the part where we're going to actually do some copy paste, right? I'm going to need to use this key, and that's a lot of letters and numbers, and I don't want to screw that up. So I'm going to copy it, come over here, paste it. All right, I'm going to leave this up for you guys if you want to copy that. Let me actually put that in after hours.
Isn't an API key equals?
Yeah, you need an equals there, Brandon.
Yeah, I do. I do need an equals there. Thank you. Thank you guys for picking that up. My Vantage API key.
I don't know what happened.
That's going in after hours chat, by the way. And yeah, I absolutely need, there we go. My equal sign. So API key equals that API key. That's the construction, right? Now we've got a whole working URL, and I'm assigning it to a variable. That's important. If you don't assign it to a variable, it gets evaluates, and then is gone, and you can't access it, right? We want to be able to access this information. All right, so run that, and cool, no errors, outstanding. So now we have URL as an object. Well, we want the data from the response, right? So this is a response object. Let's look at it real quick. URL is an HTTP response object, right? That's important. By itself, it contains nothing. But when I looked at the documentation, I saw that it had a method associated with it called read. And URL lib is a little weird. You can only read it one time. If you read it and then you don't collect that data, it's gone forever. You have to rerun the query. So that being said, we want to make sure that we capture it, right? And the way to do that would just be to assign it to a variable, right? So I'm going to say data equals url.read. Cool. What's data? Let's take a look at it. Ready for the vomit? Booyah. So that's all of the raw response data that we got from this API call. Okay, that's a lot to look at. Not really important though, right? For starters, it's not really in a format that's clean. Can't really use it yet, right? So let's look at what we need to do. We need to get this in JSON format. That would be helpful, right? Because if we scroll up, let me show you why that's a requirement. Let me scroll up here. You see this B? It's really hard to see, but can you see it right there? There's a little B and then an apostrophe and then the bracket and all of the data starts. Okay, this is important. That B means that this is a bytes object. All of this is raw data. Okay, none of it's been parsed. So we need to put this in JSON format. Enter the JSON library. Okay, data contains all of this information, so we need to put it in JSON format. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to say JSON.loads. Okay, we need to enter in the actual object that we want to load in the form that we want it. It needs to be decoded to get rid of that B. Okay, and we're decoding UTF-8. That is any web-based response object is usually going to be decoded in UTF-8. If it's not, that's weird. Okay, that's all I got. If it's not, that's weird. It should be UTF-8. I think old school was like ASCII or something like that was an old encoding method, but now it should be UTF-8. All right, so we're going to say new data. I'm just going to give it a different variable name now. New data equals JSON.loads data decode UTF-8. Cool. So what does this look like? Let's check it out. New data. Okay. So it's changed its formatting a little bit. The B is gone. That's good. It doesn't have a bunch of unnecessary spaces in it. My font makes this a little difficult to read, so I apologize for that. But what I'm seeing here is really that I have a meta. So it looks like I have metadata key and information, cool, last refreshed.
All comma separated.
Yeah, it's all comma separated. This looks like a dict. Let's check it out. What is type new data? That is a dictionary class. All right, this is information I can work with, right? Let's take a look at keys. So fun fact, this is where remembering all that stuff we went over in like unit 1, you know, working with these different data types really comes in hand. So new data.keys. And I can see that I have metadata time and then time series 30 min. Okay, these are my two keys that I have. So if I want to access the real stuff, right, the actual body of the response, not the metadata, because I don't really care about the metadata, then I need to access this key, right? And this is what I was talking about. This is why this step is important. Some APIs return this key as results. Some return as body, and they come in all different shapes and sizes, guys. Okay, getting to this point, this is where that REPL is really kind of necessary because you're just blind at this point, right? You have to iterate, try to figure out what you need. So yeah, I need to access time series 30 min in order to get my data out. So let's look at it. New data, right? And then I need to bracket notate for the key, right? Time series 30 min. Close that up. And let's go ahead and actually, let's wrap this up and talk about, oh man, hit the wrong key. Sorry, guys. I want the type of this. So I want new data, and then I need to bracket notate time series 30 min. Okay, wrap that up. That's also a dictionary. Cool. So that means, right, that I can get the keys for this. So let's get the keys for this one. So we're breaking it down, right? We have a dictionary inside of a dictionary so far. Okay, so I'm keeping track of this. All right, I have a dictionary, and then time series data is dictionary as well. So now let me get those keys. Okay, this is interesting. It looks like they're actual times. So each of these keys is a time. Cool. How many do I have? Let me take a look. I can do length of new data. Time series 30 men.
Dumb question. Do they usually come in dictionaries?
What's that?
Do the APIs normally come out as dictionaries like that?
Yeah, they should. When we do JSON loads, yeah. Remember, we're parsing JSON from the decoded raw text, or rather raw byte information that we got back.
I got another question.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get just the keys, like a list of just the keys?
I just did that.
Oh.
This is just the keys. They just have weirdly
Okay, so
formatted.
for
they're
each
all
of those
timestamps.
keys, there's all the values.
Yeah,
right?
and let me demonstrate what that really looks like.
Okay,
so
because I can see above there's like close and open and volume and all that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other stuff, right?
Okay, so that's it. Those are the keys for all that.
Yeah. So let's look at new data. Now we have to dig deeper now. Time series 30 men, right? And then from that, we're going to go down one more level, and I'm going to choose this first one, right? Looks like this right here is a key, okay? So I'm going to copy that in. 2020-03-25, and then 160000. Oh, and close that up. It's a dictionary, okay?
I mean, it says dict keys right there in front of at the beginning of everything. You see that?
Yeah. That's because I'm using the .keys method. It returns an array of dict keys.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, now I want to check this out, right? I can actually do the same thing. Let's do it. Now let's see what the keys for each individual item dict are. Now we're starting to see something interesting. For each timestamp, we have another dictionary that includes an open, a high, a low, a close, and a volume. Now, if I was a betting person, okay, I don't bet, but if I were to bet, I would bet that that's the lowest level, right? That looks to me like there's not going to be anything else, right, that follows. This is the data we're after, right? So let's reconstruct how we did this real fast. I know we're running short on time. Man, this time is flying. But now that we understand the API call, the structure of the API call, we know how to get the JSON format data. We know how to break it down into dictionaries, and we know how to get to the data we need, right? We need to go 3 layers, right? We need to call the time series 30 min, and then we need to call the timestamp of the data that we want. And then we can reference the 5 different keys that contain different data for each of those timestamps, right? Now we're ready. Now we understand what's required in order to get this parsed into some human readable format, right? And what was the end goal today? The end goal was to get this data and then have it display on a web page somehow, right? Automatically, you just hit the endpoint and then it just shoots, right there. There's the data you want, right? So I'm going to do this in a very simple way, and I want you to understand that what I'm about to do, you can extrapolate, right? You can do differently, but using the same basic style, or rather the same basic method, okay? And I'll demonstrate what I mean. So now that I understand this, I'm going to keep this for my records, right? I want to make sure that I can reference this again if I need to. Now I'm ready to go to my text editor. And I want to take a quick pause here at 45 after and see where everybody's at. Is everyone able to follow along so far? Is there any questions that you guys have about what I have done so far with this API?
Are most APIs we're going to be working with is going to have a wrapper associated with it?
No. Most will not.
Okay.
If it does, that's awesome. And it'll usually come with its own documentation that may or may not be good, right? but in my experience so far, no, most do not have wrappers. Primarily because a wrapper is usually built secondhand by someone who did not build the API for specifically for Python. A lot of websites still use JavaScript. That's like the big back end player right now. And if you're using JavaScript, that's fine, but you're not, they don't have a wrapper for that. You just use JavaScript to make the query. So, with Python, typically not unless it's something very, very popular or needed frequently in data science. So Twitter, it's not surprising that there's a wrapper for, right? Instagram would probably have one as well. But something smaller, like a state-run agency, is probably not going to have one.
And what you did just now is kind of like what the wrapper's doing in the background is what it's doing for us. So it makes it like easier.
All of this, Tweepy abstracts all of this process.
Okay, I see.
Into convenient little methods that you do, like .git, and you have no idea, just like boatloads of code being run in the background. Let's make that happen. Right?
Is it normal to still use an API, like if you're accessing your own company's private data, or
no?
Okay, no.
No, they might have you do so, but no, that's not normal. You should be querying their database directly.
Okay.
Remember, APIs are inefficient by definition, right? Extremely slow. 89 days for me to copy all of the data from Hacker News. Okay. 89 days, and that's full, like nonstop, running maximum speed, never getting throttled, never getting banned, right? It would take me 89 days to copy it. With SQL, direct SQL queries, a small fraction of that time, right? So yeah, inefficient, but good for streaming, right? If you need to collect new data on the daily basis, right? Like a chronological job or cron jobs, as some of you probably know them. APIs are great for that, right? They got no problem handling up to like, a call for 100 rows like I just did, super fast, instant almost, right? So it really just, it's all dependent on use case.
How I could see an API being used specifically with like Twitter and stuff like that is if you're trying to find specifically feedback from your business. So you can query based off of people like at Cooper's Hawk, because I work at a winery / restaurant, so you can utilize that and then throw it in a database and see where you can improve from there. So APIs will be useful for certain situations.
Very useful for data science. Let me give you a use case. Using Twitter, or rather using an API to scrape a common reviews source, right? Think Yellow Pages, Yelp, Yahoo, Google reviews, whatever, right? Using their API to get reviews on your product, right? And then doing a sentiment analysis, right? Doing NLP to try to break that apart and figure out, what people are saying about your stuff, right? Using a machine learning model to do topic analysis, right? To see what people are talking about. So yeah, that's a really like common use case for APIs, but they can be used for anything. They can be used for constantly updating a model. When you're doing forecasting, you typically need to update on an hourly or daily basis, right? You need to constantly be pulling in new information, retrain the model, redeploy. The next day, do the same thing again. Pull in more data, retrain the model, right? So you're just going to constantly be updating and providing new information for your model to be trained on. Or maybe your model is only trained on a rolling 100-day history, right, to do accurate predictions. So whatever the case is, right, you're using APIs for chronological jobs, and that's, falls right into that category. Any other questions before I move on to working in the text editor to process this information in a script?
Is this being recorded?
Yeah, it's being recorded.
Nice.
So everyone's following along so far. Nothing too crazy about this. Don't be afraid to speak up. If you're having issues, now's the time, because it's only going to get more more abstract from here, right? Okay. All right. So what I'm hearing is that we have no more questions about how the API works, right? We constructed the URL, we made a query, we got a response, we broke it down. We figured out how to access the data from that API call. Cool. So how do we do that in mass, right? We create a script. The script's going to handle all the hard work for us. So what we're going to do now is we're going to develop that script. And I'm going to do this simply. Let me try this. I hadn't really thought this far ahead yet. I'm kind of winging it now, and I'm not sure. Do you guys want to see me do this in a separate file and then import the function, or do you want to see me just build a route that does the API call? Because both ways essentially work the same. They're just, one includes an import and one
Whichever
doesn't.
way is going to be on the sprint.
You can do it both ways.
Yeah, I think building the route is more efficient now.
Yeah, well, it is for small, simple
Small
calls
jobs.
like the one we're going to be doing. Yeah, you wouldn't need a whole file. There's not multiple functions. There's only one, right? So I'm just going to build a route. I'm going to build an endpoint that's going to make an API call and then display a template with that data on it. Okay, super, super cool. So let's make it happen. How do we do that? We're going to backtrack, or rather recreate everything that we did in our REPL, right? Starting from the actual creation. So first, obviously, we need to first declare that this is a route with the app decorator, and we're going to name it. What do we want to name this? API call, right? Something simple for now. This could be anything you want, though. And I'll just make it ambiguous. We could do get post, though I don't think anything's actually being posted on this route, but it's kind of irrelevant, right? Now let's define the function that'll be run when this endpoint gets called. So we're going to call this API call. Keep it simple. All right. And I always just go ahead and do a return. It's good practice. Let's give ourselves a doc string. Make a simple API call. Display the data returned. There we go. Okay, so now, what was the first thing that we did? Let's scroll up and check it out. I've kind of got this memorized, but if you don't, then you would just scroll back up in your REPL, right, and take a look. What's the first thing I did? Did my imports. That's going to be important, right? We need these libraries in order to be able to do anything. We have two options here, and I'm going to tell you the best way to do this is to make them global. Okay, these aren't big. For starters, these are not large libraries. They're standard Python libraries. They're pretty easy to load. So they're going to be easy on memory. Let's go ahead and do that. Again, what were those? We used from URL lib import request. So we're going to need that. Uh-oh. We've got a problem. What's the issue?
You already got it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a conflict with another.
Yep. What is that called? Does anyone remember what that's called from module 1?
Programming.
I honestly thought it was a conflict.
I'm sorry. Don't call me off guard, y'all. What the heck? Programming. Yeah, it is called programming. It's called a namespace conflict, right? Or rather a namespace collision. Okay. If I do from URL lib import request, I am now overwriting this previous function request. I don't want to do that. Yeah, I don't want to do that. That's an important situation, right? I need that request. So what I'm going to want to do, and this is a hacky solution, but you could alias it, right? You would do from URL lib import request as RQ. Okay, so now I don't have a namespace collision. It's going to import this module, but it's going to alias it for me as RQ. So I shouldn't have any namespace collisions. Crossing my fingers, okay, crossing my toes. If I did, then I might choose to simply reformat this into import URL lib. This is a valid solution, right? So now request becomes a module, or rather, so to do it, I would need to do like URL lib dot request, right? Dot URL open, right? Instead of just request. So I'm trying to get rid of this. I'm trying to make life easier for myself by eliminating the amount of typing I need to do. But sometimes that's not possible, and that's okay. But I'm going to try my method, right? From URL lib.
Couldn't you also import import URL lib dot request and then alias that?
No, just request. I only need request because everything, all the other methods are methods of request, right?
Okay.
This is a module.
And did you say URL lib is what do you call
Standard.
it? Stock in Python standard.
Standard Python library. There's also URL lib 3. I'm not going to get into that because then it just gets confusing. URL lib has request, and that's the way I know. That's the way I'm going to teach it. If you want to choose a different way, that's fine. There's like 5 different packages you can use to do these. I'm going to defer to their documentation though. Okay. You can ask me, but I'm just going to go look up their documentation. So
a rabbit hole is free for you to go in.
yeah, that's exactly right. Cool. So now I've got URL lib request from URL lib, and I need JSON, right? JSON is that magic package that helps us work with JSON data, right? We need that. So yeah, and it looks like from there I just went right into doing a request.url open. So let's go back down to our route. Let's go ahead and get this process started, right? We're going to make an API call. This is a very basic command, okay? There's a lot of ways to do this. Keep that in mind. I'm just going to copy pretty much what I did from the REPL, right? So we'll say URL. What is that? URL open. Cool. So we'll say RQ now because we've aliased it. URL open. And let's go ahead and reconstruct this URL, which I think, let's see, alphaadvantage.co. So that's going to be www. Bear with me, guys. alphaadvantage.co / question mark query. Nope. Is it query question mark?
Yeah.
Query question mark. Query question mark function. And that's going to be time series. Yep. Equals time series intraday. You got to kind of yell it a little bit, you know, because it's in all caps. And actually, it might be simpler just to do this. Yeah, and then we want symbol, interval, and API key. All right. Fun fact: you can multi-line this. I'm not going to, but you can. All right, with the 3 quotation docstring method, you can multi-line this. So if you want to make sure that you're PEP 8 compliant, you can see I'm crossing that 79 character line. You would need to multi-line this function, okay? This URL is just super long. Or you could function, or you can make it an F string, right? And concatenate, if you will, the various variables and just use the bracket notation to do it that way as well. Again, 100 ways to do it, but you know, I'm just going to keep it simple for right now. This will work as well. So we'll say MSFT. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, MSFT. And then interval is going to be 30 min. And then ampersand interval equals, and we'll say 30 min. Ampersand API key equals, and now I'll just go back to my notepad real quick. Double click that. Control C, Control V, booyah. So now we've constructed our URL and we're ready to make an API call. Yeah, go here.
URL in the chat. Sorry, I'm just having some issues displaying the screen.
Yeah, no problem. This is a very long URL. Again, if you want to shorten that or multi-line it, that'd be fine too. Let me find, where is 3D controls? Give me the thing. There we go. Let's go into the Zoom chat. Fun fact: you click on that, you get to see what that looks like in your browser. That's a valid URL that you can travel to. All right. So now I have the URL constructed. What was the next step? The next step was reading that information, right? So I had the response. So now I need to capture that information in another variable. So I'll say data equals URL.read. And then I need to load this data, right? So I have that long, raw, sort of unkept, if you will, data, and I need to get that into a prettier format and decode it because it's a bytes object. It's raw, right? That's not going to help us. We can't use that. So now we'll say new data equals JSON.loads, and we'll say data.decode. And we want to decode UTF-8 because it came through the internet tubes, right? Came through the vast series of tubes that is the internet. It's going to be UTF-8. All right. So now I got new data, and new data, if we recall, there we go, is a dictionary. And I need to access that first key. That first key is going to be the time series 30 min, right? So I can, here's another cool thing too. If I change that, let's say I change 30 min to 5 min. What do you think this is going to be?
5 min.
Yeah, it's going to be 5 minutes to 30 minute here, right? More than likely, and the API is going to follow a similar convention. However, if something breaks, that's the first thing to check, right? So I like to make notes of things that might break, right?
Could be 0.5.
Exactly. Could be 0.5 min. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So I would make a mental note of this, like, okay, interval is something that's probably, if something breaks, I want to check that first, right? Like if it gives me an error, like it can't find that key or that key doesn't exist. Okay. But for my purposes, I know where it's at. It's in 30 min. I've already done this. So I can say, and I'm just going to kind of do example-esque, right? I'll say first dict equals, and then do this first bit, right? I'm going to get the response body out of this out of the JSON that I got. So that would be new data. You know what? Let me keep a convention here. This is the response body. Let's call it what it is, because I don't want to confuse anybody. Okay. So the first tag is meta. The second is a response body. I want the response body, right? It has all the bulk of the information. And that's going to be time series, and then in parentheses, 30 min. Cool. And then from that, I want a row, all right? Remember, the next key is a row. One row of data, one little block of information, all right? And I'll call that a row. You could call it a block. You could call it whatever you want, but it's one set, one dictionary that contains all the info I need, right? So I'm going to call this, let's see. I don't want to do this. I want to iterate, I think. Might actually be able to stop here. No, I need to. This is the part where you have to plan ahead, right? I'm trying to consider how I'm going to be displaying this information. And I'm thinking, do I want to leave it in a dictionary, which is acceptable, or do I want to put it in a tuple, right? And this is all for, and let me be clear. I'm thinking about, okay, when I do my Jinja, right? I'm going to do a for loop over my block of data. So how would I need to format it, right? Do I need to reference keys? What do I need to do? And I think the best way to demonstrate maybe is just to leave it from here, and we can do this. We can return render template, right? I haven't made a template for this yet, but I'm going to. So we'll go ahead and reference the not yet made template. We'll call this API test.html. Okay. I need to put a comma here. Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna mess with it too much, but I entered that data in, and the first part of the dictionary is definitely the indexes.
What are you talking about?
If you just, I don't know if it's just gonna be easier to work with as a tuple. Just looking at the information, like the first set of the dictionary is metadata, information, symbols, last refresh, intervals, input size, time zone, and then the rest is literally like dictionaries of the information.
Well, you took out the metadata.
Yeah, I'm taking out the metadata.
Oh, okay.
I am referencing only the response body. That's minus
I
the.
missed that part.
Yeah, this is basically saying, okay, I don't want the meta. I'm scrapping that, right? And response body only contains everything inside this key, which is a dictionary of all of the.
Oh, okay.
which looks like the key is a timestamp, and then the value
sense.
for that key is another dictionary that contains all the information for that timestamp. Okay, so I'm going to be breaking that out, but I'm going to break it. I think I want to break it out inside my Jinja, and I'll demonstrate what that's going to look like in just a second. Okay, but basically, I'm going to be doing a series of loops to print out all the information in a format that is, basically that I choose. Okay, that part's arbitrary, but this part's not. I need to actually give this template access to this response body.
Mhm.
And the best way to do that, excuse me, is to say, in this case, I could do data equals response body. It's arbitrary. This is what I'm going to use to refer to it in the Jinja template, right?
Mhm. When it
And
returns it.
Exactly. And this is referring to the actual variable that I've defined right here. Okay.
Yep.
So basically, I'm passing response body off to the template. Okay. So let's go ahead and create that. We want to, I'm just going to do that from here because it's easier. We'll add a new file. And remember, we call this API test.html.
Mhm.
Cool. Go ahead and save what we got here. And let's go ahead and create this template. So keeping with, excuse me, with tradition, I'm not going to do any real styling. This will probably just be the list of information vomited onto the screen, but I'm going to try to do it in a concatenated sort of, or rather organized kind of fashion. And you'll see what I mean. So let me create the HTML template, right? In my case, I have this sort of autocomplete. Let me demonstrate again for those of you that don't have this sort of autocomplete thing. You don't technically need doc type.
I was about to ask that.
Yeah, you can just do HTML, and then you want a head, and then you want an end head, and then you would do body, end body, and then end HTML. This is bare bones, what you can get away with, okay? This will allow you basically to continue. It won't be certifiable, right? In that W3 schools would be like, this is not valid HTML, but, or rather W3 would complain, but it'll work, it'll load, right? You can do things like specify a lang, you know, this is gonna be in English, and then direction, left to right. You'll see that typically pops up in like in your template when you do the autocomplete, right? That's just defining stuff for the browser, and the browser will interpret those things. However, if you're in a editor that has autocomplete, you can just get yourself a nice template right here. And if you want, I'll just copy and paste this.
In VS Code, the bang exclamation mark does the same thing.
What's that?
In VS Code, if you just do the bang, so if you delete what you got there, Brandon, I don't know how it works in Atom, if it works or not, but instead of typing HTML, just bang.
Nope.
So that would autocomplete into
in VS Code
type stuff. Yeah, in VS Code.
Okay. I wonder. No, it's not going to do it. And in fact, if I do it like this, watch what happens. Look at that. That will break your website right there. That extra caret will break this whole thing. It won't load right, or rather, it'll always appear.
Jacob,
So
what did you say? What is
Jacob,
it?
that is
Exclamation mark
amazing.
bang?
Exclamation mark.
Yeah,
Just
just
make-
just hit
Exclamation
enter.
mark and then tab.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Oh.
And for those of you that don't have that, I've included that starter template code right there in After Hours chat. So
Cool.
whatever you're on, whatever system you're using, you should be able to follow along, right? So let's go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and do HTML. Remember, if you need me to stop, slow down, or whatever, let me know. All right, so we're ready to get started. Now, everything that I need is going to be included right here in the body, right? The body tags where everything gets rendered. And we're running a little tight on time, so let's kind of speed this up. So yeah, I have the response body as data, right? So I'm going to want to make sure, right? The first thing that I typically do is say if data, right? If something's being passed in, right? Then I want to do stuff, right? That's just a good step to catch any potential issues where you might say, you know, go ahead and loop through data and yada, 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 and then your code breaks because no data was passed, right? So if something breaks, I want to have that catch. And now if data, right? So if data has been passed and data is a valid thing, then I'll say for row in data, okay? Trying to keep that naming convention alive. I know that the row is a key value pair of a timestamp to another dictionary. So I'm going to need to access that next dictionary. How am I going to do that? Anybody have any ideas? What can I do in here that's going to give me access to that next dictionary?
either to give you access to the next dictionary.
I wanna come down one level. I need to get onto that next dictionary. How do I do it?
Row.keys. I don't know.
For key value and data.items. That is valid, right? Data is a dictionary.
Yep.
So I can call .items and get a tuple, or rather it'll give me key value pairs.
Yep.
Okay. This is important. I can get the keys and the values. I need the keys to get the values, if you will, right? The value is going to be the next dictionary. So let me rename this, okay? For value diction, or rather, I'll just call it dict, okay? So now I have, that's a namespace collision.
Yep.
I don't want to do this. Naming stuff is so hard sometimes. But key value is, a key is fine. Well, rather, I could call this timestamp, okay? And call this row. It's a row of data. Consider for a second that it is like, this is kind of like a meta organizer, right? A tab, if you will. And then this is the actual row of data that contains column, rather like data frame style format, where you have one row and it's just got a bunch of columns and values for those columns, right? If you will. Is everyone tracking that kind of logic? Okay.
No.
If not, I can totally do like a really bad stick figure like drawing of what I'm talking about.
Can you do this in the REPL?
Can I do it in the REPL?
Yeah. Can you do this example in the REPL? Is that possible? So I can see like each working thing.
Oh, each step? Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
in the REPL.
Totally can, my dude. Hang on. Let's see. So we had new data, right? So what am I doing here? I'm saying if data is new data. Let me just confirm real quick. Data is new data time series 30. So I'm just going to go ahead and define that for myself now. I'll say response, or rather data equals new data time series 30 min. Call that. And then say for, what am I doing?
Timestamp.
Yeah, for timestamp row in data.items. Stamp row in data.items. This is a great way. Go ahead.
I thought if you have like two variables in a for statement, you would have to wrap data.items and enumerate.
Not necessarily, because items returns two things. Let's check it out. Print.
Oh, it returns two things. Oh.
So it returns two things. It returns timestamp and then row. So now, see, I'm printing timestamp, and I'll show you. I'm going to show you why I want timestamp. Okay, timestamp is going to be important. It's going to be part of my organization to this whole process, right? But I need to be able to access row as a dictionary, so I needed that separate. So by calling items the method, I'm getting basically a two-step return, right? It's giving me the first thing, which is the key, and then the second thing, which is the value in that key. And I'm telling it to do that for all of them. So it just iterates nicely over each one. Okay? And yeah, do everything that you're trying to do in your Jinja format in your REPL first. Make sure it works, right? Sometimes things have unexpected results, or things don't go the way we plan for them to. Catching it early is always good, right? And then making the necessary changes. Okay, cool. So I know that this works, and I know what that looks like. So now I need to format this some way, right? So let me get some information. I can say for timestamp row in data.items. So now that I have a timestamp, I want to do something, okay? What am I going to do in this case? I'm going to do an H4 of timestamp. That's the first thing I want to do, okay? And this is part of this is like the most amount of styling that I'm going to do, right? So to speak. I'm really just going to try to sort of pseudo organize this stuff. But imagine for a moment, right, that you could do pretty much anything you want. Okay. So yeah, now I've got timestamp, 4 timestamps, and I'm imagining in my mind. So now I see that I'm just going to have a bunch of H4s of all the timestamps, but I want all of the other information to come down next to it, right? So I want each of the row data, all this row data, to be underneath its timestamp, right? In some organized fashion. And I'm thinking I want to do an unorganized list, okay? So a unordered list, rather, okay? So now I'm going to do something different. I'm going to open up another for loop here, and for key values, right? Yeah, value in row, right? Because row is a dictionary, and I need to access .items again, okay? So now I'm breaking open this one, okay? And what do I want? I want 1 open, 2 high, 3 low, 4 close, 5 volume, and then the associated value, right? And that's what this is going to give me. So that's going to be the first part. That's going to be the second part, okay? And I want to print them out. I'm going to do that. I'm going to create an unordered list. And each list item is going to be its own paragraph. That is spacing. I don't know. Actually, I think it'll be fine. So I'll do P key NP, and I want to do this. Everything inside of here gets parsed, and then this gets parsed auxiliary to that. We'll do P. Actually, I could probably just do it like this. One big P. Key value. See if that'll work. That should work. And then we'll end this, NP, end list, and UL. Okay. Or rather, what I need to do, excuse me, and let me do this first, and then I'll explain why I have to do it this way. Okay, I want to open up this UL, right? We're still in this particular part here. I want to open the unordered list for each timestamp, right? And then I want to iterate through the rows and make list items only. If I did this on the other side of this UL, then it would do UL list item, 1 key value pair, close the tags, reopen the tags, close the tags, reopen the tags, close the tags, right? That HTML would be messy, right? So I'm trying to do this to keep the HTML as clean as possible. For very large queries, it will also bog down the server as well if it's having to do a bunch of writing of code, right? So I'm trying to limit the amount of writing that Ginger actually has to do.
Do you want paragraph tags or just break tags?
They're paragraph tags. So I'm just basically for each key value pair and row items, I'm doing a list, right, of those key value pairs formatted in some kind of way, right? And how do I want to do this? Also, yeah. So I should have a bold header with a unordered list under it for each timestamp, and each timestamp should have an unordered list of its row data, which will be this information here. That's the plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, and basically, this will happen on each iteration, and that's how I know that that's going to work, right? And then this will happen on each iteration. So I have a nested for loop, but it should work. Now I need to close up all of these for loops that I've got going on, right? So here at the end of this for loop, I need to close. End for, right? This is important. You don't have to do this in Python, but you do need to do this in Jinja. It'll break, okay? And then trying to keep my indentation right. End for again for the outer for loop. Then back up one more time, and if. Okay, so let me just double check.
Yep, you got it.
I think that's right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so if all goes well, what do I expect? I expect that I'll have a single output on this template here. That will be the timestamp in bold lettering, followed by an unordered list of its contents, broken out into key value pairs. Okay, let's see if it works. And actually, you know what? To make this clear, I'll do a strong tag on key. All right, cool. I could sit
Styling
here.
to the max.
Yeah, I could sit here all day styling, guys. Seriously, I'm gonna try to keep this short because I want to demonstrate a pickle as well. Okay, So yeah, now I have my template set up. Awesome. And I want to make sure that my route works. Let me just double check my logic here. It's going to do the API call first, read the data, load, decode the data, shoot that response body back to my template. My template does take from if data. Okay, it's looking correct. Let's go ahead and save all this and open up this right here. I'm done with this REPL for now, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of it. All right. And I'm in my PIBIM shell, so I'm going to go ahead and check. Yeah, I made a run.py for this. Python run.py.
Hey, Brandon, could you open the routes file in the background?
Yes, right here.
Thanks.
The one at the bottom is the one we just made. Okay, and while you're doing that, I'm going to ease on over here to localhost 5000. Okay, so I hit my first endpoint, which is that base endpoint. I was a little confused. Like, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I need to access the endpoint that I just created, right? I didn't make a link or anything fancy like that, so I need to kind of ease on back over here and remember what this is going to be, right? So this is / API call. Are you good with the route, Jacob, or do you need to keep it up a little bit longer? You're good. All right. So I'm going to come over here and API call and starting to sweat a little bit. Let's hope this works, right? If all goes well, I expect it to make an API call and print this data in some readable format. Here's hoping. This is good. Spinny wheel is good. That usually means it's making the request.
Is it pulling all, like, did it give you a length of data? I guess it's 100 only, right?
Should only be 100.
Please going back to the beginning of Microsoft.
I'm just really hoping it works. It's taking an awful long time to do some real basic stuff. Service unavailable.
Your API is done.
Interesting. Where's it hitting that problem at?
503.
Request URL open. Okay. Return opener. Timeout.
Yeah. It's a 503 down there.
Yeah. So it didn't work.
We're going to have to use the API from the sprint, buddy, unfortunately.
It worked for me.
It worked for you?
Maybe multiple people are requesting it at once.
Exactly.
That's what it is, probably.
Yeah, if you were running. All right, no one else run the code right now. Is no one else running it? I think you
got my own API key.
That's good. Yeah, now it works. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't look very good. Okay.
Styling is awful.
Styling sucks, but it does exactly what I expected it to do, right? Looks like
I like how you indented the one.
I don't know why it's indented. That's so weird.
No.
Okay.
I think it's because you had a space between it, no?
Maybe. Okay, so yeah, so it gives, but this is technically correct. I don't think the machine did anything wrong. I think I screwed up, right?
So this is good enough for a data scientist, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Job security right there, buddy. Job security.
But we made an API call. That's what's important, right? So I want to, now let's put our brains together. How can we extrapolate on this? Let me ask a question. What if I wanted to get multiple symbols? How would I do that? How could I make multiple API calls on this route?
Drop another variable.
Drop another variable,
you
right?
can make this a function and like have one of the parameters of the function be the symbol, and then
Exactly.
like a list of the symbols that you want. And
Exactly. Let me real quick. Pretty sure that I can do this like in somewhat record time. Make a new file here. I'm going to call this API call.py, right? What if I wanted to define a function, API call, pass in a parameter, right? Symbol, okay? And then it constructs URL for specified symbol, okay? So real quick example, right? Symbol could be a list, symbol could be a single thing, right? Whatever we wanted to do. In this case, it's a single symbol, right? So if I want to do an API call on Microsoft, you know, I would say, let's construct the URL. URL would be HTTPS. And again, I think I can do this pretty fast. Let's find out. This needs to be a string, HTTPS, alpha, Vantage. Oh, thank God for autocomplete. And then query, question mark. This needs to be a F string, by the way, because what I'm about to do. Function equals, what was
MSFT.
that?
MSFT. Oh yeah, time.
Queries intraday. Oh, here comes the magic. And symbol equals
MSFT.
symbol.
Oh yeah.
And what was the other thing we needed? It was the time series, right? So that was in what format?
30 minutes.
Interval. Yeah. And then end interval equals 30 min and API key equals yada, yada, yada. Okay. It's not really important. We're not going to actually call it, but this is an example. Look, now I can do multiple symbols, right? So I can just do this and have this API call return this URL, or I could even go one step further, right? And have it walk through the whole freaking process. I could have it do everything.
Yeah.
All right. I said minimal copy paste. That was the only real copy paste you're going to get. Okay. But I know it's 30 min, so I can leave this the same. It should be the same, right? And then go through this process and then have it return response body. How do I use this? I hear you say. Not a problem. Let me help you out. For starters, we need to actually do our imports here, right? So we import because we're using request, right? This is going to be request.url open and then the F string. Let's get it right now, Brandon. Got a little ahead of myself. We construct the URL. We read the URL. We load the URL. We get the data we want. So let's now import the things we need from URL lib. Fun fact, if we do this here, we don't have a namespace collision, right? Import request and import JSON. Okay, save that nonsense. I'm weird. You got to have two new lines below your imports. So now I can just remove all of this, right? And do API call. Let's do MSFT and API call. And this is not assigned to anything. This needs to change. I'm just going to call this data. And yeah, there's a method to my madness here, guys. Okay. That, yeah, we're going to say
or something.
Data equals MSFT, right? I could do data equals TLSA, right? It's not a real API. But what I would do, right, is then have up here, I'm going to do from dot, because it's in our base directory here, right? API calls, right? Import API call. Everyone's following this logic so far.
Yep.
All right, so now I've concatenated everything that I wanted it to do into one function. I've got everything here is rather working. And actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this. Because I think I got time. Famous last words. I think I got time. Copy, paste. So now it's a real thing. Now it actually works. So I can do data equals API call Tesla. And, or rather, even better, let me really throw a wrench in all this. Data equals list.
Yeah.
You know what I'm about to do, don't you? Data.append, API call TSLA, and I could do another. I think I can do another one in here, right? No, I have to do a separate data.append API call. This is kind of messy, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And then pass data in. So data gets data. Right? Data at the end of all this at the end of all this code gets executed. Data is the API call for Tesla and Microsoft, comma separated in a list. So I will need to make a slight adjustment to my template now to handle a list, right? So let's go back to, got too much going on here. API test.html. Okay, so now it says if data. Well, that's not really applicable, right? Anymore. Now I need to do for item in data, right? Because data is a list. I need to pull that meta dictionary out, right? Or rather that time series dictionary set out, that timestamp row dictionary. Okay, so I've added one more thing here. And from here I need to, so I've got if 444, n4, n4, n4. Okay, I got to make sure I close up all of my 4 tags, and my spacing is all. There it is. So yeah, no, this is what's wrong. Sorry guys, I'm weird. There we go. So yeah, now I have this set up, and I end all 3 of my 4 loops here. Luckily, they're not very big, so this won't be too bad, right? And then my if statement. Sometimes this is just how it goes. Typically, we would try to be a little bit more efficient.
Oh, you're Adrian Jr.
Yeah.
I
Typically,
was about to say.
yeah. Let me be real for a second. Normally, you don't need this many for loops, but just kind of demonstrating the power of Jinja, right? So save that. Save that. Look at this. We don't even have to change anything. It's already there, right? It's already detected these changes and updated our local host. So let's go ahead and reload the index page, make sure everything's refreshed. Go back to our endpoint API call. Let's see if it worked. Uh-oh, we got a problem. We got URL error. It's saying, what's the problem here?
Symbol.
Doesn't like this URL.
Or maybe the symbol.
Open.
Earn 02. Or maybe you can't. I don't know.
No, that should work.
Alpha. Wait, is it Advantage or Advantage?
Alpha Vantage. Let's make sure.
Alpha Vantage, yeah. Oh, it's www, buddy.
Okay, so we had a code error. All right, the problem is usually between the screen and the chair. It's normally how it works. Machines don't mess up normally on their own. Normally, that has been known not to be the case, but it does sometimes happen. Okay, we got a different error. Undefined. Okay, I can mess with that.
API test.html.
Okay. List object has no attribute. Items. Oh, data.items. Another issue where I didn't make the proper modifications, right? I need to go back to API test, and sure enough, I'm calling a list, trying to call .items on a list. That's not going to work. I've renamed this. It's now item, all right? Specifying this item. So now this is the dictionary that has this option on it. Luckily, I think that's the only thing that needs to change. That follows through, yeah, with row. It's the next dictionary. Okay, cool. Let's save that and run back over here. So it keeps telling us useful information out freaking standing, right? And now we can see that this just got really long. We're doing 2 different calls, right?
Yeah.
That's much longer than it was before. So that's a pretty good indication that it's working as intended. If I wanted to be sure, I could maybe print out the name of the symbol up here, right? But that's, up to you. I'm just demonstrating, but it did work. Yeah. Outstanding.
That's Tesla for sure.
Yeah. So yeah.
I don't know why that one is indented.
I think it has something to do with HTML formatting. Or something like that. I'm not really going to get into that too much. That's, if you want to figure it out, go figure it out.
Yeah.
It could be because of paragraph, maybe. Let me try taking the paragraph tags out. See what happens. Yeah, because this should only be.
You don't think it's that colon?
Hang on. And for, I got to stop. Take this one out.
Oh, because you're inside of the line.
Should you put back in the? Oh,
There you go.
There it is. That's looking a little bit better. That's what I expected it to look like. I'm like, man, there's a lot of spaces going on in there. Yeah, okay, cool. So now it looks right. What did I do? I made sure that the only thing that got iterated over in this for loop was the list strong, you know, all of this stuff that's basically this, right? So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it moves on to the next line.
What API is this?
This is the Alpha Vantage API. I found it on Public API's GitHub.
That's today's.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is all real data. This is real data. It just limits how much you can get at any time to keep their server load low.
And the market's closed right now.
Also,
true.
For like the bare bones.
Yeah, I think this is the last.
Did you like? Was that the after hours for the day, or was that a session that I missed of after hours where you made that? Does that make sense? That question.
Oh, Chris, yeah, no, that was an in-house.
Okay, like in your
support hours. Yeah, that was more of an in-house support hours.
Was that recorded?
No, but the skeleton app that I made, the one that I am working on, the one that I just iterated on, is available.
Yes, it was recorded.
Oh yeah, no, Jacob has that. Yeah, I forgot. It's totally recorded. Also, that web app, this whole app minus the things that I just did, is available in the after hours chat. If you scroll up.
Yeah, I have that.
Okay.
I was just curious if it was recorded.
Yeah. No, Jacob totally has that recording somewhere.
I'll message him to you.
I appreciate that so much.
If anybody else wants it too, I think go check it out. It's not best, like I said. I'm not a teacher in profession.
Buddy, you're a very good teacher.
But I hope some of this is making sense. But yeah, so now I've demonstrated how to create a route. Right, this route makes the API call, and I even showed you how to put all of this into its own little space. Right. So imagine that this is this is akin to the Twitter.py, right? Where you have all of your Twitter logic, right? That's going on. And then I just import it because just like a module package, right? I'm just saying, hey, from myself, and then reference the file API call. So it just goes here and looks at this, right? Grab this function that I just made. So it goes in there and it finds this. It executes all the code, but specifically it's going to make this available on the other page, right? So now in routes.py, I have access to that function, and I'm able to do that, and we see that we do get the response that I expect. All right. So yeah, that's that. Does anyone have questions?
Can you scroll down to see if the other one if Microsoft is down there? I mean, I believe you.
Imagine that it's about halfway through. Yeah. Here's oh no, that's
still Tesla. Microsoft at $150 something.
There it is.
There we go. Cool beans.
Right there. AC goes from 316 back to 325. Yeah. Right. So now we're starting over.
So I'm kind of curious. Like, I'm trying to figure out how it works conceptually with like the routes. So what I'm thinking is that the routes kind of feed the data into a page that you're trying to see on that app. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they handle the logic that gets executed whenever you change the URL. Right? This route decorator. Let me break into some of the under the hood stuff. Right? This app route decorator right here is monitoring this thing right here. Okay. So this is directly linked, right, to this. Okay. Then it's going to pull out the HTTP method that gets transcribed into every call, right? So if I just access API call, I'm not sending any data along this in a post method, then it's going to infer GET, right? And we see that here, right? So it shows me a GET request made on API call. It tells me the HTTP version, and it tells me the response code 200 means success, right? So I got that in my server logs. That's what this app route decorator does. Now, everything that follows that is the logic that is executed when when this is detected, right? So when route says, "Hey, API, we're at this route. Let's reference that," right? And this goes all the way back to init imports the routes, but essentially, the app detects that the route has changed to /API call and immediately executes all this code. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes more sense. Thanks.
Yeah, just like standard Python. So you can consider this standard Python, right? And anything you can do in Python, you can do here.
Yeah.
Okay. You just have to make sure. This is why I said kind of have to plan ahead a little bit, because whatever you want to display needs to come in a format that is interpretable, right? So you can't print Python objects. That's not going to work, right? In HTML, you're going to need to put it in a format that is capable to be transcribed into HTML, which is what I did. That's why I had to break everything out. And then here, that's the purpose of all these loops, right? Is to get to the core of the information, to get it in a format that Jinja is able to convert into readable HTML. Okay, that's a little bit of a trial and error process, right? Sometimes you may not know what format you need to be in or what it's going to look like. So you just do things, right? That's an okay situation to be in. Do something and see if it works. If it breaks, fix it. Iterate. But yeah, that's the basic API call. Does anyone have questions about this process so far?
Oh, that was good, bro.
Outstanding. Secondary to all this is importing a model. So I've left myself a little bit of time. Hopefully I can do something. I'm not sure. In fact, you know what? Let me kind of walk through the process. I don't know that I have time to actually sit here, train a model and all that stuff. I didn't have that prepared. But I will talk about it for sure. Okay. And sort of briefly walk through what I would do. Okay. I'm going to create a new dialog here. That's getting busy. This is Clink, by the way, if anyone's interested. Clink is really awesome. Clink, it comes with Commander, CMDER. It's a terminal emulator, but it allows you to run any terminals you have on your system as admin as well. It's really fun. But Clink in general, I like CMD is default Clink. Allows you to run any Unix command line function like ls, all that stuff, right? So if you're used to if you like Linux commands, but you're working on Windows, it like mixes bash with command prompt. It's super cool.
It's like the PowerShell though,
kind of sort of, but PowerShell is its own unique beast, man. PowerShell also has some of the Linux style commands on it, but not all of them. So this just sort of makes life a little bit easier. But yes, let's look at this. I'm gonna cd into local cd web app. Okay, so let's say for instance I need to train a model that I'm going to use in my web app, right? First thing that I might do, and I don't have Jupyter, so I would make sure that I'm out of my pipm shell. If I'm in my pipm shell, right? Let me just confirm. I don't think it shouldn't work. Let me try Jupyter. Hoping it errors. It should. Nope, it doesn't error. Okay. Never mind. Apparently it doesn't care. I stand corrected. I know nothing. Build is up to date. It's doing stuff. I don't know what it's doing. Gonna leave that alone. But yeah, I'm on my Jupyter lab. Just all fancy pants, all right, looking. But I would create a new notebook, right? And I would do some things, right? In the style of Jacob, right? I would do some things and run some stuff in this location, right? But essentially I would build a model, right? Everyone remembers from unit 2, right? You need to do your imports, right? From Sklern, I'm just gonna call that Sklern, right? From Sklern underscore, or rather dot linear models, right? Imports linear regression. Waiting for autocomplete. Give me a linear regression. Come on now.
RAG.
Okay, apparently that doesn't want to work. regression. I was trying to do the tab complete, but it's not working. All right, so from linear models, import linear regression, right?
Regress.
Oh, that's why it's not working. No, that's why it's not working.
Why?
I don't have Sklern installed. Doesn't have access to it. But yeah, you would do this, right? You would import all of your packages, collect your data. What does that mean? If your data comes from the API, you're going to need to collect that data, right? So you would do an API call right here in a Jupyter notebook. That's a thing you can do, right? The same way that we did in our terminal, right? You would just import rather from URL lib, import request, import JSON. Actually, I think you don't need JSON. No, you do need JSON. But yeah, you could get it in this format, right? And then do all the same things that we just did, okay? And then once you have your data, you could say, you could load your data, right, into the format that you need, into a data frame, right? So make sure you have pandas imported, and then you can, how do you convert data from a dictionary into a data frame? Anyone remember?
What?
How do you convert data from dictionary to a data frame?
PDF data frame.
Mm-hmm.
Making an array.
Yeah, exactly. So if I had, let's go back and look at this real quick.
I've been watching the other lecture, and
yeah.
Alex, I think was DS10. Alex Kim does a great one with the DF predictor.
Gotcha. So
he really talks it out.
Okay, right on. Yeah, you need to first get it into a data frame, right? You're just following all the same steps that you did in Unit 2 whenever you build or train a model, right? That plays a part. Now, I don't think that you're going to have to do this. Typically, that job is separate from the person building the FLASK app, just because you should be 100% focused on building a model, and the FLASK person should be 100% focused on building the FLASK app. However, this process, the integration for which is what's important, right? So once the machine learning engineer rather, has developed their application, they've collected their row data, they built a data frame, right? They split, they did their good science, their good data science, and they built a model, right? So now they have, that's ellipsis. Awesome, I didn't even know that was an output. Okay, Jupyter Lab getting smarter over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so now they have a model, right? They need to pickle it. So how do you pickle? I don't remember off the top of my head. Are you serious right now, this thing? What is it?
I hate you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna, oh my God. Why is it so small? Make it bigger. There we go.
Oh, so many
Keep your jokes to yourself.
Is that going to be part of the sprint? We going to be given data to pickle off of a?
I don't think so. Pretty sure you're not. No.
Okay.
I thought Nick said that pickling was part of the sprint.
I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but it's just time consuming.
I have no idea. Honest to God. If it's the same sprint challenge that I took, I have no idea what the heck you'd be pickling.
Okay.
No clue. I will confirm this. I will confirm it tomorrow during the staff meeting. Okay. And if pickling's going to be on there, then I'll make a note to proclaim such.
I feel like that's just busy work.
It kind of is, but it's an important process.
Yeah.
But yeah. So how do you do it? Well, I would just go to Google and pickle model in Jupyter, or rather Python, right? So I just want the Python code for how to pickle a model, and looks like I've been here before. Not surprising.
Visited 928 times.
Yeah. Here's a picture of a jar of pickles. Very applicable. Okay, yeah, I've definitely been here before. So yeah, we see this is we need to import pickle, and then it looks like they train a model real quick. I'm not really concerned with all that. Okay, here's the part that I'm concerned about, right? Save model to disk. Looks like it was two lines of code. Outstanding, right? So I would set a file name and then
it is important.
Dump it.
It is important that it is an array, though.
Yeah.
It won't pickle objects or text or anything.
What are you talking about?
It needs to be formatted correctly, or it just won't pickle. At least that's from my understanding.
It will pickle a model. So
Right.
if you look at, if you're looking at this where you're actually pickling model, you're passing that in as a variable. That object is serializable. Okay, so you can pickle it.
Yeah.
And then you would do open file name. What does that mean? That means write mode. For W is write mode, B is binary. Okay, that's important. You're making a binary serialized object, rather file. Okay, so you WB to write, you RB to read. Okay, but yeah, pickle.dump model open file name, cool. And then load the model. I'll say loaded model equals pickle.load, and then open file name RB.
I'll read it.
Sweet. That's the that's the work, right? That's it. 3 lines of code to both save and reopen it. Outstanding, right? And then this is just extra stuff. They actually get a result from their model, but just demonstrating that it works right out of the package, right? So you train the model in a notebook, and then save it. You'll have an actual physical file, right? That physical file needs to go in here somewhere, right? We need to refer to it. I like to use a static folder, okay? Static is just static. It's not going anywhere, okay? So you drop it in static. The important thing is that when you go to, when you reference this model later, right, and you have a Python file open, then you need to refer to where this is actually located. That's this open file name. Now has to be a path to the pickled file, right? So if that's located, for instance, let me give you an example here. Okay, if we're in this, right, load model, right, and I'll pass in, well, nothing, because
Static.
Yeah, it's static. I don't need anything. Okay, model equals, right? So I want to bring this model in. How do I do that? Pickle.load, right? And I need to open, and then I need the file name. Now, if it's in static, where am I currently located? Let me break this down. So if I'm here,
you're in templates.
I'm in API.
Oh yeah, you're up.
I'm here. Okay, so I'm in the same directory as the static folder. How do I access that path? Let's say it's static, and then the file name is model.pickle. How do I do it?
Just quotes in the file.
Then the file name.
Yep.
So I would just do model.pickle.
Oh no, you need the slash.
Static.
Correct. I need static.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, because because you're outside of the app.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, I'm inside the app, but I'm not in the static folder.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, this is being executed from outside. So from where it's being executed from, I need to then trace a path to the file. So it would go /static /model.
I thought it was one file up.
No, I got confused because the static looks like it's pointing down. It's on the same.
Oh yeah. No, it is, but there's nothing in it yet. But assuming that there was, no, dot goes up one. So
that's why I thought it was one directory up. It wasn't.
It wouldn't be. You could do dot, but that's the same thing as this. There's no need to do that. But yeah, so now we could do, and then we just need RB, right? So we're reading the binary code. So this would be valid code, assuming that we had a pickled model and we hadn't imported pickle, right? This would work. This is the process. That's it. Then you do stuff with your model, right?
Yep.
That's it. That's simple, guys. Okay. I don't mean to make light of it, but it really is 3 lines of code. Once you've trained your model, that's a whole nother.
It's because that's not the hard part. The hard part is when your pickle's freaking 3 gigs.
If your pickle is 3 gigs, you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Straight up. I've seen neural networks that aren't that big. In fact, there's an NLP neural network that is 1 gig, and it literally has the entire English language. And it's 1 gig. Okay, your pickle should not be that big. You have for sure screwed up. Promise.
I forget how big mine was. It wasn't that big though.
Yeah, I've seen them get that big, and it's usually because they've got some crazy nonsense going on. They've accidentally included a bunch of data that they didn't need, or something like that, right? Now they can get up to several megabytes pretty fast, right? But typically not in the gigs. If it's a gig, you're woof. If it's over 100 megabytes, I'm concerned. What have you done? What the heck are you pickling? Right.
With trees, you can get up there easily. I got to 2 gigs.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm pretty sure John had the.
Well, how many columns? How many columns did you have?
It was only like 15 columns.
How many rows?
It was either 150,000 or like 3.
That don't make sense.
Yeah, 150,000 times.
No, but it doesn't save all the rows. It doesn't save the data. It saves the weights for the data based in the model.
I was using XGBoost.
Oh, XGBoost? Yeah, that one's a little bit weird. You have to pull, if you save the XGBoost model, you're saving all of the data associated
All the
with
branches.
Yeah, you don't want that. You just want the best estimator. You have to pull out it's a nested object that you have to get to. If you just do the base XGBoost model, you're getting all of the associated history. So not only are you getting the model that you're using to predict, you're also getting all of the historical models that it used to train on. You're getting all of the iterations and all of their associated data. So if you have 200 epochs, right, you're getting the history of all 200 iterations as well. Yeah. So that's probably why it was so big.
Made my app run way too slow.
You have to pull out the best estimator.
There's a parameter just for best estimator?
Mm-hmm. You want
nice.
one tree, the best tree. Right?
Yeah, I didn't know that. That would have made things way more convenient.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, you have to do that. You have to specify that you want just the one. You're not only getting all of the objects, you're getting all of their associated histories, parameters, everything that goes with them as well.
I chose linear regression just for speed of app.
Yeah, and it'll work. Typically, linear regression is good enough.
Yeah, it's all right.
For some simple things. But that's beside the point, right? The fact is you could get complex, super complex neural networks. Freaking 40 layers, freaking 100, thousands of connections, thousands of neurons, and then it shouldn't even be getting close to a gig, right? And that if you can do that, then XGBoost should definitely not be getting up there that close. I had a pretty big model one time, but it was because I used XGBoost with 1,599 columns. Right, that's a lot of data, so a lot of weights, and I think it topped out at 159 megs. Okay, and that's after I oversampled 20,000 extra rows of data and everything. Is 159 megs. So if you're getting 2 gigs, you're doing something wrong. For sure, doing something wrong. That said, it's kind of irrelevant, right? Whatever you have to do, if you have to pickle, this is the process you follow. Train your model, save your model, load your model.
It's a good interview experience. When did you overcome an obstacle?
Well, one time.
I pickled a model that was 2 gigs.
I pickled a 2 gig model. Realized later that I
had too much
information.
You walk in with a badge.
Yeah.
Professional pickler.
Professional pickler. I think there's an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants where is it Patrick that is trying to get his pickling license and he has to pickle the like a skyscraper or something like that. It's crazy. I don't even know. It's nonsense. Yeah, so that's that. Does anyone have any questions?
I feel like there's so much to this. I wish we had longer than a week.
There's imagine for a moment, right?
Oh my God.
That you took a pipe cleaner and you rubbed it along the surface of titanium infused steel. Okay, the amount of scratch that you have applied to that titanium infused steel is about how deep of a scratch we have made into the surface of FLASK.
That was deep, buddy.
Yeah.
It was.
I like FLASK, and like I said, unfortunately, I haven't been following Mike's lectures. I went back and have followed other lectures, and
That's
feel
That's okay.
feel that it's actually pretty accessible. My predictions aren't working anymore, but
no.
Hey,
The
I think
predictions in this case were secondary to understanding the API calls.
Yeah,
Okay? That's important to understand.
the API call works.
Well, then that's good. If you're able to integrate that to the database, right? I didn't directly talk about it, but the process for adding this data to the database is not much more complex than what we've already done, right?
Yeah.
I would simply create a model for it and then pull the data out the way I need it, right?
I think it's because I'm using k-nearest neighbor classifier. I don't know why it doesn't work anymore.
So it could be a whole bunch of reasons, but that's a separate issue, right?
Yeah.
Typically, when you're working on a team, you'll have someone dedicated to doing the machine learning side of it, and then another person will be the dedicated data engineer. They're the ones who are constructing the application. Okay.
Is the database part of the sprint challenge, you know?
Yes.
Probably, yeah. I imagine you'll probably have to make it a SQLite database and load data into it.
Hey, I got a super quick question about this ginger, whatever, however you say it, buddy. I can never get it right. If I want to extend, you know what extends is?
Mm-hmm.
Into another HTML page. Is it extends?
Yeah, extends.
It's not working on. It's been driving me crazy. It's not working.
It's not working?
On a separate thing that I'm doing. It's not working. But let me ask you, do you think I should have that doc? You think doc should be loaded on top of that? Is that doc type?
Possibly. I don't know that that in particular would be causing the issue. Let me look at. Let me refer
not
to.
anymore. Maybe a few years ago.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think that was deprecated, or rather, no longer necessary. But I think that was no longer necessary after HTML5. HTML4, I remember it was very strict about the doc type being declared, but
I learned HTML when HTML3 was still a thing.
Mm-hmm. Same, bro.
It was like literally 10 years ago.
I remember sitting on the bus coming home from high school, just straight coding raw HTML.
I was in college, but
I was coming home from high school with my little school laptop. We just had a little Dell Inspiron single core. You load a JPEG image, it's like burning hot, right? Yeah, I think it was great. But I used to code HTML and Notepad. Real talks. Okay, so let me refer to.
So we did it. Notepad plus.
Yeah, I was on the old school version of that. This Notepad. Real talk.
That's how I went to college, buddy.
Hell yeah. So let me reference my portfolio page. So I've got this working, and take a look at my app here. Layout, login, register. Let me pull that up here. Actually,
I just can't get it to read the style sheet, bro. It's been driving me insane.
I fixed that for you. What are you talking about? Can't read
No, buddy. I'm talking about the one that I create. I don't want somebody else.
Just copy and paste that shit in there. It worked perfect.
You got to link them, Andy.
I did. I used URL 4.
So if you guys want a sneak peek of what this can look like, this is my logic for login routes. Yeah. This has an admin login. These are some of the imports that I got going on. I got a login manager for user sessions. But yeah, let me take a look at the layouts. I think this is the base page.
So you do have doc type on there. I know. You got extends on there too.
Extends, and then do you have the quotes around it though?
Yeah.
Then it may be doc type. That's the issue. The only other thing you need to have is the blocks for the content, and then in your layout you need to have.
That's what I was asking you, if you need to put blocks in, like the head part, like
block in block, block in block, block in block. So I've got 3 different blocks that I do. in this layout, and each one has a name, right? It refers to this name.
Wait, I have a question. So you don't actually have to put it in between the end blocks? Like, you know what I mean? The block and end block? Yeah, dude. Block, end block, about.
Yeah, here and here.
Yeah.
When you do that on your
Yeah,
layout.
that's a block you're creating.
Mm-hmm.
But why is that? Oh, because div class.
Yeah, this is just some bootstrap.
Yeah, that's just a class.
Yeah, but this is what's important. So you have your block on your
Got
layout
it.
page, right? And then you have block here that has the content that's going between, like it's going in this location, right? So imagine that just copied and pasted this HTML right here.
Yeah,
that's what that would look like. Yeah, are you getting an error, or is it just not?
No, it's just not showing my.
Make sure. I guess make sure that your layout has all this defined, right? We got my doc type, HTML lang, and then head stuff here, my body tags, some other cool stuff that you guys might get to learn about later. Yeah, that's how it works.
I'll keep playing with it.
Double check your syntax. Make sure you're not using the double bracket, using the percent bracket or the bracket percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that's all I know, man. It should be working. Double check. The problem is usually between the screen and the chair.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, turn the chair around, Andy.
The what?
If you're still having issues tomorrow,
turn the chair around.
Huh?
He's saying turn the chair around.
Oh yeah.
He's trying to be funny.
I gotta turn the computer on. I know, for real.
But yeah, if you're still having issues with it tomorrow, send me the code, man, and I can definitely put eyes on it. If I see anything, I'll let you know.
I will do.
All right.
I have a question, like a quick question. You said that during the sprint challenge, we will need to use, upload to the database. Will we need to use migration, or we can skip that? I mean, will it be required? Or
If it
not?
works, it works. You're never going to, typically you're not required to ever use any one particular package. I think they try to structure these things to where you are required to perform a task. How you choose to do so is more or less up to you, maybe with some guidelines, right? So they may say, don't use this package, but still do this task, right? I think in this case, and I say I think because it's been a couple of months since I've done the sprint challenge, if you're required to insert into a database, you're not required to use any specific package. So whichever way works for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, have a good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, and with that, you know what? It's 8 o'clock. So I think I made time. Wow.
You did good, buddy.
Super impressed with myself. Anybody have any questions about the stuff we covered today? That was a lot.
No, I'll have a bunch of questions tomorrow, though.
Bunch of questions tomorrow?
Yeah.
Right on.
Doing another.
My brain's fried.
Yeah. Yeah, tomorrow we work with the magical proc file, and we get to do Heroku deployment, which is so fun. Let me tell you, it's those exciting times, right?
I was just trying to do that and I got errors. I was just like, I'm done.
Yeah, if
I was like, it's working fine locally. Heroku was done. I'm done.
Yeah,
it was a style sheet error too. I'm not even joking.
Quick question though, maybe about tomorrow. It'll probably be answered tomorrow too. Does Heroku have like a .env?
Mm-hmm.
Like okay, I was gonna say, how does that work? But that makes sense.
Same exact way.
Yeah.
The same code works too.
Does it?
You have to, you can use load env, or load. I think it's .env _load or whatever it is. Whatever that code is, I always have to look it up.
Doesn't have like an intern like. I feel like that's really unsafe to load your env file into it.
I remember.
No. That part's not that part is not unsafe. Because you're using the code that's going to be os.environ.get to actually access the env file. Basically, the .env loader thing just makes the environment variables present to the application. But that doesn't mean you can't just reverse access that, right? You'd have to be able to execute code on the client or on the server side, and that's not allowed, right? You can't do that.
I mean, I downloaded that Heroku CLI thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That lets you access Heroku through your own command line.
Yeah. Do we need to send the code to Heroku in a different way? Because I remember for the Dash app, we were sending it through GitHub, and we don't put our .env file on GitHub. So
yeah, check it out.
Okay.
I'll show you real quick.
That was
Hang
a
on.
better way to ask.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Let me show you Heroku real quick. Heroku.
Once it hits 9 o'clock my time, my brain doesn't work anymore.
Here. Oh god, I gotta sign in. Oh god. Please save my info. Yeah.
Oh no! Too soon, buddy. You should know better. You've used computers before.
I think it's
always after you hit the button.
Maybe. Oh no!
It's all good. We'll see it tomorrow.
No user.
Damn it! Hang on.
I was just thinking about that when I was actually going to try to deploy my thing. I was like, how the hell does that work?
Oh, that's definitely not it. That can't be it. That cannot be it. I try to have some similar passwords.
Now you're locked out for 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I would literally poop. Man, it's not even funny. Maybe? No, didn't like that either.
Maybe that's not your email.
Nope, doesn't like that either. Nope, doesn't like that either. Okay, well that's all my stuff. This is kind of.
I have the same password, and then I just add like Heroku at the end or whatever app I'm on. If not, I'll never remember anything.
All right,
I'll make sure to note that down.
Hang on, I want to show you this. If you got a second, it only takes a second here for me to load that up. I've got mail on my
Force
desktop.
plus.
We're in quarantine, buddy. We got
app.
till like April 15th.
equals Andy.
Roku password, yeah. Reset my freaking password.
Good luck guessing mine. Mine are freaking sentences, literally.
You use the manager, Ryan?
Most of the time, yeah. Most of the time, I have to delete half of it because it's too big.
Wow, password is invalid. Must contain 3 of the 4 following: capital, lower, number, symbol. Come on, man.
Let's debug that together. Come on.
That's why you couldn't guess.
Probably not. Yeah, I didn't realize it had to be so freaking complicated.
1, 2, 3, 4 ABC.
Nah, that's not how I'm gonna do it. Stop trying to save
Password.
Password trying to save passwords, and I hate that. That's how I get screwed up.
Let's see where I'm at.
Okay, I've got it. Yeah, update my freaking password, bro. All right. So let me reshare my screen now that I've done that. So yeah, when you log in, you'll see this screen, which will have any current applications that you've got. Right, I've got Airbnb, FLASK, TwitOff, my own TwitOff here. And actually, I'm going to show you that one because this one we had to use the .env. Right. So yeah, you can actually hook up a Postgres Heroku database, which is really awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's free. Sweet. Come down here to settings, though. We can see we have config vars down here at the bottom, right? Config vars change the way your app behaves. We'll reveal those. Basilica key, database URL, FLASK env. This is all the stuff. These are all your environment variables here, right? So that's how that works. Cool.
I probably could have figured that out just thinking about it a little bit longer.
I'm just saying, yeah, it's really that simple.
Oh, yeah.
We'll go over all this stuff, right? So, but yeah, that's it. Go away.
Well, that's really cool too, because my app, every time I unload it, it totally deletes everything. So.
Yeah. Right on. Oh, do you have it set up on a route? Like when it loads up, it drops all the tables and then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, you would probably want to take that out when you go to production. But yeah, does anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you for doing this, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thank
dude.
you again.
Yes. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll do it again tomorrow. I'll deploy this little weird skeleton app that I have that now does a random API call for market data. I'll deploy it to Heroku too. How about that? So I'll walk through that whole process. Sound good?
It's perfect.
Sorry, I was texting.
That's all good. I said tomorrow for after hours, maybe I'll work through deploying to Heroku as well. All right. I've done it a couple of times. I've got a little experience.
That'll take us 4 hours.
Nah. It can be very fast if you know what to do, right? If you know how to find and troubleshoot those errors, which hopefully
if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Now deploying to Heroku, I think, is a stretch goal. I don't think it's required. Okay. Like, it's just one of those things that you do need to know how to do, like, but more at the high level, right, than the specific Heroku level. Let me explain why. Heroku is a platform as a service, right? That platform can change. You could use any other. There's a whole number of platforms that you can use that essentially give you a web-facing server, right, that you can deploy a WSGI on, which is a I forget what WSGI stands for, but it's basically just a web app, right? Yeah.
I mean, you could technically build your own web server.
Exactly. Yeah, you could run one out of a Docker container on your computer if you had the right setup.
Yeah.
Essentially do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
In fact, Heroku essentially is it runs a Git repository in the back, so it stores all your code in its own Git repository, not unlike GitHub. So it's just a separate GitHub, and then it uses that code. It takes the proc file, which we'll create, right? That gives it its execute command, and it actually builds a pseudo. It looks like a Docker container at the programmatic level, right? So for all intents and purposes, it builds its own Docker container web server, and then executes the code in your proc file to run it. Right? That's it. That's all it does. So really, once you break that all apart, it's quite simple. Right? And if you had the right know-how, you could do it yourself. So you don't even need Heroku.
Yeah. I was wondering what that G unicorn thing is that's in that proc file or whatever. It's basically
it's a Python
server.
Yeah. So instead of using FLASK production environment, we choose to execute on G Unicorn, which is actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting and structuring the production environment for the application. So we use G Unicorn to run the app. Right. It's abstracting a lot away. This is really cool. You can run G Unicorn on your own computer as well. So you could actually do instead of FLASK run, you could do G Unicorn run. It would do the same. It would have the same effect. All right. Once you export your FLASK app, you can execute G Unicorn. We'll definitely talk about all that tomorrow, though. Okay. Whew. Any other questions? No. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. I hope this has been helpful in some way. If you guys have any other questions or get stuck on anything, just feel free to DM me. And I'll see you all tomorrow. We'll work on deploying this stuff to Heroku. All right. Later, y'all.
Yeah. Brother, thanks, man.
You got it.